is it transmitting?
Blake's a long ways along in this process with city council.
Sing the song now.
But you're still welcome to get up and take the seat.
Okay.
But,
Hey Deb, you guys are on the,
you're not gonna be.
I just started the last one.
Okay.
Okay, 1 minute.
So we are gonna move.
Give me just a second, let me just make sure that.
Okay. All right, I'll just keep talking here. January 26th.
Okay, yeah, you can go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the January 26th, 2021 hearing examiner meeting for the city of Caldwell. We are in the era of Zooming, and we are working out our equipment situation, but I'll kick off the meeting in the traditional manner with the opening statement. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Caldwell Hearing Examiner for January 26, 2021. I serve in both decision-making capacity and an advisory capacity to the mayor and city council. There are two types of public hearings that this commission conducts. The first is a legislative hearing whereby we formulate recommendations on certain land use requests. My recommendations are then forwarded onward to the city council, who makes decisions on legislative matters. The second type of hearing is quasi-judicial in nature, meaning that the requests are specific to a parcel of land. I'm authorized to make decisions on requests for special use permits, variances, preliminary plat, time extensions, and planned unit developments that do not involve the subdivision of land. However, any decision I may make tonight is by no means final. Anyone that believes he or she has been aggrieved by my decision has the right to file an appeal to the city council. On quasi-judicial requests that involve the subdivision of land, rezones, and annexation, I am authorized to only make recommendations to the city council, who will make the final decision. The hearing procedures, as required by the Idaho Code, are as follows. Staff will first present a report on the application. 2, the applicant or the applicant's representatives will then present a summary of the request. 3, testimony of those in support will be taken, followed by testimony from those in neutral position, followed by those in opposition. 4, I will allow the applicant or applicant's representatives rebuttal. After the rebuttal testimony is given, public testimony is closed, and no new oral or written testimony will be allowed unless I reopen the testimony. The testimony time limits are as follows. The applicant receives 10 minutes for testimony. Those in favor, neutral, opposed, and rebuttal are all given 5 minutes each for that testimony. I accept oral and written testimony for those in attendance, but only if you sign the sign-up sheet to speak available at the front of the room and have been sworn in. When testifying before me, you must come to the podium or Zoom, state your full name and address, and acknowledge that you've been sworn in. I ask that everyone treat all parties with fairness and respect. I will not tolerate any outbursts and such. I also ask that those in this room turn off your cell phones, please. I'm a volunteer hearing examiner and receive a small compensation for my effort. I am charged by law to keep a clear record of the proceedings, consider factual testimony, and to stay within the city's and state's rules and regulations. We, the city staff, thank you for your courtesy to us and to others as we move through the process. And at this point, we'll swear in the staff and those in the room. Lori?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony shall be in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. We had a public hearing 2 weeks ago that concerned 3 of the cases on tonight's docket. We went through the motions of hearing those cases, but we did experience technical difficulties. The sound from my mic and others in the room were not being broadcast over the air. So for that reason, we will rehear the first two items on tonight's agenda and proceed ahead with the third and fourth items as essentially new business. But we're going to start over, a total do-over, on last week, or last hearings examiner meeting. And so, starting new, we will go to the first item on the calendar, and this is such. Case number SUV 20P10, SUP 2010. I request by Blake Wolf on behalf of Ridgeco Properties LLC for preliminary plat for 10th Avenue Heights subdivision, a multifamily residential development in an R3 high-density residential zone on parcel R35664 containing 2.55 acres. A variance of the common driveway standards is requested for the internal circulation streets. The proposed multi-family development contains 9 residential lots and 2 common lots with 8 fourplex buildings and 1 duplex for a total of 34 dwelling units. The subject property is located on the west side of 10th Avenue, approximately 180 feet south of the intersection of Andrew and South 10th Avenue, and is continued from November 10th. And we'll open the floor to the staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. We need to pause 1 minute to make sure that Blake can hear us on the Zoom call.
Okay.
Please ask him if he can hear you.
Blake, can you hear the transmission? Do you hear my voice? Okay, we're still waiting to connect with the applicant. Mr. Wolf?
Blake, please unmute your.
Blake, please unmute your phone.
There we go. I can hear you. Now it's on.
Okay. Great. We've got the connection. We're going to proceed ahead with the presentation of the staff report. Ms. Root, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. As indicated, we are continuing the 10th Avenue Heights development hearing. This was heard on November 10th, 2020, and was tabled to a date certain in the future to be able to address the internal circulation streets within this development and have some items on the preliminary plat completed, such as the street width, parking lot, or parking stall width, get some easements in place, and to ensure that the street widths were compliant with the fire marshal's requirements where fire hydrant placement. Mr. Wolf worked closely with Alan Perry, the fire marshal, to determine the locations of the hydrants and the spacing. He has provided for greater than 26-foot wide internal circulation streets. Tonight, the question to the hearing examiner is to consider a variance of the standard common driveway standards and to essentially eliminate the restricted length of that common driveway, which is 150 feet. And we're going to eliminate that to allow for the circulation streets that are within this development. And the second one was the number of lots that would be served by that internal circulation. At this time, staff will be presenting a workshop to City Council to address the ordinance revisions to allow for internal circulation streets. Would not then require a variance for those standards, but at this time, staff is asking, and the applicant is asking to consider a variance of the common driveway standard. The development itself, the property is zoned R3, and so the multifamily residential development is consistent with the R3 zoning. The applicant has worked to meet all of the requirements that are set forth in the ordinance for the R3 zone and his multifamily development proposal. The proposal was presented to City Council at the time the R3 zoning was put in place, and Mr. Wolf has consistently followed that presentation through on this sale. With that, staff believes this is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The preliminary plat meets the requirements of the subdivision ordinance, and with a variance, the internal circulation streets will provide adequate circulation and access, emergency services access to all of the units within the development. And I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. The one question I had, or one of the few, is the variance to the 150-foot length for a driveway. What is the longest extent of the driveway in this development? It exceeds 150 feet.
Yeah, it exceeds 150 feet. Blake may be able to tell you more directly, but the spacing for the fire hydrants, so there are two in the development at this point, had to be, there had to be an additional fire hydrant added because we were over 600 feet.
Okay. And did you also, on the same vein, make a calculation about the allowed 6 units to be serviced by a private drive? And what is the proposal before us? Did you parse that out, or is it just a lump sum for the whole development?
Yeah, it is a lump sum for the whole development. There's 9 residential lots in the development. The structures will be fire sprinklered or have adequate emergency services distance because of the additional fire hydrants. The fire marshal was satisfied that emergency services could provide fire protection to all of the structures, which is typically the reason why the 150-foot length is pertinent, because that's the length of the fire hose as they lay it to the structure.
And Ms. Ruth, the fire chief has indicated that the modifications to this plan are adequate or more than adequate to the fire department's needs.
Yes.
Okay, that was the major concern of the first hearing, and I'm glad to hear that. I could see that there's been some good work here, and then the addressing has been given mimicking a street address to help with public safety access to properties.
Correct. All of the streets have been named. The names have been approved through our mapping or addressing process. They were added to this preliminary plat, so they're consistent with what's been approved. What will eventually could become a shared access at Easy Street has been addressed as well, which was on the south property line at 10th Avenue.
Thank you very much. That concludes my questions. I would like to have the applicant make their presentation now.
Okay, I trust you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Blake Wolf. I live at 843 West Horizon Way in Nampa. Ms. Ruth laid it out pretty clearly. Just add a few things. The main items, and you know this, Mr. Hearing Examiner, is just getting a large fire apparatus throughout the development, easily, and, we've addressed all those items with Fire Marshal Perry. If you see all the radiuses on the curving around the parking stalls, those all meet code, for turning. To answer your one question about the distance, and I don't know the exact, definition of the code, but we go about 150 feet, somewhere between 150 and 200 feet for each direction before there's a turn. So somewhere in there, we trigger, exceeding the 150, but it's really close. Like when you come down, the rooftop lane and make a west on the Macy lane, that Macy lane is just right at, looks like 160 feet from that turn. So it's really close, but more importantly, we've widened the lane and, centralized 2 fire hydrants for the fire and, their large apparatus to get throughout the subdivision. And also, Ms. Root did mention we named every lane for ease of finding each building and finding the residents in case there is an emergency. I think everything else has been spelled out in the staff report. I do understand and agree to the facts and findings and the conditions. I'll state that publicly also. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, I do one. I neglected to, ask you to, swear in. Were you sworn in?
I swore in, even though you didn't hear me, I said yes when Lori, said that at the beginning.
Okay.
But I'm happy to do it again if we need to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Wolf. Properly sworn in. I do not have questions for you. I directed them to Ms. Root. Does that conclude your presentation?
It does. I'll stand for any more questions.
I have no questions, and more comments from staff.
No, you would need to ask Mr. McKay if he
Okay.
intends to testify, but I have no further comments.
Okay. And we have, on the sign-up sheet here, Mr. David McKay, would you come forward and give your testimony, please? Mr. McKay, we can swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Thank you, Mr. McKay. And state your name and address, please.
My name is David McKay. I live at 3709 South Kimball, Caldwell, Idaho. The reason I'm here tonight is I own the 2 acres that borders up against Mr. Blake's property, this new subdivision they're putting in.
On the west?
Yes, to the west of it. And my main concern is I didn't want to end up, being landlocked. And so that's why I'm here. A year or so ago, I talked to somebody at the city offices. They said that if I had a driveway 30 feet wide, that would qualify me to build houses in the back in this 1.5 acres of ground that I have left. This paper's from the city of Caldwell, but I can show it to you so you better understand maybe what I'm talking about.
Sir, would you like to enter that as an exhibit?
Yes.
Would you hand that to me, please?
Give it to you?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kay.
Yeah, I own the deed for this is Mr. Brooks here. Then I own all this property.
Okay.
These are the 2 houses.
Thank you, Mr. Kay. And do you have further testimony on that?
I'm sorry, I don't know your name, but.
Address the questions to me, please.
The question would be that, she thought the property would be wide enough there on the Caldwell side that a road could be put in there so that houses could be built on my acre and a half that I have left. I actually have 2 acres there, but I've got 2 houses in the front part of the 2 acres.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kay. I addressed this at the November hearing. We had that discussion. At the time, it seems that you do have some access. I don't think 30 feet is sufficient for a public road, but it might be a public right-of-way. But, you know, you still have some avenues because you own the whole piece of property. And that does not look like landlocked. You know, I can't possibly rule or advise you on that, but you do have some kind of remedy there because you own out to Kimball. And so perhaps you need to work with the staff on that and seek a solution. But I thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have no other person signed up to testify on this case. So go ahead and take a look at the findings. First of all, we have findings as facts for the special use permit with a variance request. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law, special use permit with variance request. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and approve, deny, or modify the request for a multi-family housing development and to provide relief to municipal code section 11-03-02, parens 14, common driveways. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The order decision, the special use permit with variance request, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby orders that case number SUP-20-10, a request by Blake Wolf on behalf of Ridgefield Properties LLC and CAD Properties LLC for approval of 10th Avenue Heights multifamily housing development consisting of 9 residential multifamily lots and 1 common lot in an R3 high-density residential zone. And the variance to the common driveway standards for the proposed development is approved with the following conditions of approval. And those conditions are found in the staff report, page 18, and conditions 8.2 and 8.3. And moving to the next section, the request for the preliminary plat, the Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law, Caldwell hearing examiner has authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements are met. The hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. In the recommendation section for the preliminary plat, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number SUB-20P-10, a request Blake Wolf on behalf of Ridgefield Properties LLC and CAD Properties LLC for preliminary plat approval of 10th Avenue Heights subdivision consisting of 9 residential multifamily lots and 1 common lot in an R3 high-density residential zone for the property located on the west side of 10th Avenue, approximately 180 feet south of the intersection of Amber Street and South 10th Avenue, parcel R35664 in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the following conditions of approval. Those conditions are in section 11, beginning on page 19 of 39 of the staff report, numbers 11.2 through numbers 11.17 inclusive. And with that, we conclude this hearing. Thank you.
Thank you.
And moving through the agenda, item number 2, case number ANN 20-00010 and SUB 20-00013, a request by Bob Totten on behalf of Pontifex Capital LLC to annex parcel R34-410B, 13.98 acres with the zone designation of R1, single-family residential, consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan designated as low-density residential. Also requested is a preliminary plat, Langley Hall subdivision, of a 10.41 acre portion of the subject property containing 29 residential lots and 12 common lots. The subject property is located 10164 Elvira Lane, Nampa, Idaho. And with that, I'd like the staff report from Ms. Root, please.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard. The proposed development for Langley Hall subdivision, an annexation and a preliminary plat is on 13.98 acres. This presentation, or this preliminary plat, improved significantly, took the suggestions of the city council and this hearing body to heart when they resubmitted their preliminary plat and annexation application. They significantly improved the development to include additional open space, a better lot configuration, excuse me. The property would be annexed as R1 low-density residential, which the proposed preliminary plat meets those standards and criteria. The comprehensive plan designation is low-density residential. The application was found to be consistent with comprehensive plan components. The applicant did receive approval from the Bureau of Reclamation for a crossing of the canal at Spruce Street. They've also applied for an aerial crossing for their storm drainage across that canal with the Bureau of Reclamation. They have approval to put the pathway along the canal and to seed that with native grasses. They're still responsible for maintaining, controlling the weeds and things along there, but essentially the applicant has met and exceeded the comprehensive plan requirements, the ordinance requirements, and have provided to this hearing body a a nice development for an R1 zone in an area that is developing, although surrounded by some county properties and things, but, staff is recommending approval of the development as presented for annexation and, preliminary plat, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. I don't really have any questions, mainly because the first time that we heard this application, it did have some issues. Those issues, have been addressed adequately here, as you pointed out in your staff report. But with that, I'd like to move on to the applicant's testimony. Mr. Totten, are you online?
Mr. Hearing Officer, yes, I'm here.
And Mr. Totten, were you sworn in?
Not yet.
Okay, we'll swear you in.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this case will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Totten. Proceed with your testimony, please. You have 10 minutes.
First of all, just for the record, my name is Bob Taunton. My address is 2724 South Palmatier Way in Boise. I have a PowerPoint and I'd like to share the screen. Okay.
Just share the screen. 1 second, Mr. Totten.
Okay, you should be able to share your screen, Bob.
Yeah. Hold on here. We did something. Okay.
We're still trying to make that connection with Mr. Totten and the things he wants to share.
There we go. I believe we're there.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Deb, for a really good overview. I'll just go through some slides pretty quickly. I'm representing Pontifex Capital LLC. With me tonight is Lee Genke, who's the owner of Pontifex, in case there's any additional testimony he'd like to offer us. Okay, this is the vicinity. I think everybody knows where it is, and I think staff did a good overview on that, so I won't spend any time on that. The application request, that's been mentioned. Just a couple of points that I wanted to make here is that the applicant concurs with the staff report and the conditions of approval that are in the staff report. And that's basically all that I want to say there. As mentioned, the total property is hold on a sec here, 13.98 acres. And following annexation, the applicant is going to do a simple lot split and create 2 parcels. Parcel A is 3.57 acres, and that will be the Bender home site. It, of course, is going to be rezoned R1. And then parcel B, the 10.41 acres, is actually the location of the Langley Hall subdivision. Project summary, just a couple of quick things here. Under the preliminary plat features, the lot sizes, we have a really good variety of lot sizes. The range is from 8,000 square feet to over 12,000, and we have 6 lots that are over 10,000 square feet. So a good mix of lots, even though it's an R1 subdivision. The qualifying open space, the requirement is 6%. And with the elements that I'll talk a bit more about in the landscape plan, we are at 6.86%. And this is the preliminary plat. I'll be spending a bit more time in a second on the details of it, but we access the subdivision from Spruce Street. There's a single cul-de-sac roadway called White Rose Place, which provides access to all of the lots. We have the Noble Drain, which is 110 feet of the easement that bisects the property and leaves this particular parcel over here that's in the southwest corner. It's, I guess the main point in the plat is it's a pretty constrained site. There aren't a lot of options in terms of how the layout could take place, and I think what we've done is we've capitalized on all of the elements that we can in order to be able to come up with a great layout. This is the preliminary engineering. We have all of the utilities they're all available. There's some extensions that are necessary. The drainage, by the way, will be in this infiltration basin over here with an aerial pipe that will be going across the Noble Drain. But you can see sewer and water. We have 3 hydrants that are required by the fire department, one at the south end, one at the north end, one in the middle. We have 10-inch water lines, 8-inch sewer lines, and pressurized irrigation is, of course, available. This is the emergency access. Because we have a cul-de-sac, we need emergency access, and it has been reviewed by the fire department. It will connect into Elvira Lane, which, of course, goes out to Midland. And when the application is approved and the final plat is underway, we'll be producing an actual easement that will be recorded on the vendor home site property to provide the emergency access. There also will be bollards that are located here at the top end of the cul-de-sac. And by the way, this is not going to be a route for ped and bicycle access. So that's going to be obviously restricted. On the landscape plan, this is really the plan that really kind of tells the story from the change from the first plan. Our goal here was to create a internal connectivity for the residents in the subdivision to be able to access a new amenity, which is this park here, and also a 10-foot major pathway that connects into the Castle Peak pathway and also to the Arbor pathway to the south. There's also a small park that will be over here. We're calling it our Southwest Park, and I'll get into some details on these things. So really, the residents that are over here, they have an easy opportunity to be able to access this central gathering place. Obviously, the residents down here can, get to the trail and come in that way. But it works very well from the standpoint of the configuration of the property in creating really a central gathering place. Looking at the main park site, we're going to develop a natural active play area for the kids and a picnic shelter, also a shade shelter that for moms with young kids that want to watch them play, they're able to do that. There'll be grass, trees, walking path here. It'll be connected by via a micropath that's landscaped, and you'll be able to access the 10-foot major pathway that's located right here. We also are going to be irrigating grass here, so providing a very nice green on the other side of the Noble Drain. This is the maintenance area for the irrigation district, so it's going to be native seed only and will not be irrigated. We're not able to do trees to meet the landscape requirements for the major pathway within the easement, so we've added a 5-foot landscape easement to all of the lots that back onto it, and this is where we're going to locate the trees, so we meet the code requirement for not only shrubs but also trees. We're not able to do any trees, as I said, in the irrigation easement. The Southwest Park is meant to be a more passive park. We've created a berm, or will create a berm here that does shield a little bit the infiltration basin. We're creating a seating area and a little pathway, and it's going to end up being a very pleasant seating area, but also a very attractive streetscape entry to the subdivision. So I think it's going to add a lot of value to Spruce Street, even though this is really a separated parcel from the rest of the subdivision. There were a couple of questions at the last hearing about what is the HOA going to maintain. So I added this particular exhibit that should help to explain that. Oh, sorry, let me get back to it. area, is actually the easement, or the license area, I should say, in the BOR, or in the irrigation easement. We don't have an easement, it's really a license to do the things that we've been approved to do. So that area, the pathway and the grass, the irrigated grass, are going to be maintained by the HOA. The easement, on-lot easement that's here, that I was talking about a moment ago, plus another on-lot easement that borders the other irrigation canal that's on the east side, that will be maintained by the HOA. And then the lighter green area, those are the common lots. So we have the infiltration basin, the park, the main park, the shared drives that are landscaped on either side, here and here, and also the entry, the buffer, streetscape buffer, and entry features, entry elements, landscaping that we have. So really, from the standpoint of a home buyer, most everything that they will enjoy will be taken care of by the HOA, and the owners really just have to deal with their on-lot landscape. Mentioned the last time that we have a gap in the paved trail. Our trail will end right here. This is the boundary with Castle Peak. They have a 10-foot trail here, and there is this gap in terms of for a paved major pathway. This is what it looks like looking southeast if you're on this street. It's very walkable. It's just not as usable, I suppose, as a multi-purpose pathway, which is what the major pathway is. But obviously, residents in Langley Hall or residents in Castle Peak are able to traverse the area. And it'd be great if the city could somehow convince the HOA there to finish off that particular pathway. As Deb mentioned, we have some approvals already from the BOR, the Spruce Street crossings, which is the road, sidewalk, utilities, etc. We also have the major pathway that's been approved, and the two that are pending are the aerial crossings for the drainage pipe, and also the native grass and the irrigation line that would be right next to the major pathway. We've had a preliminary review. It was found to be appropriate by BOR based on the letter we received in December. They asked for additional processing fees, which we provided. So we're very confident that that is going to be approved. This is a map from the application to BOR. So we're talking about this landscape, grass area, the pathway, as I said, has already been approved, and then the aerial crossing that is right here in order to bring the, to the drainage over to the infiltration basin in this triangular piece. So with that, I'm ready to stand for questions, and as I say, Mr. Genke is with me, so if you have questions for him, we're happy to answer them.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Totten. I like your redesign. You complied with the issues that were addressed in the initial hearing. I just had one question on what will that aerial pipeway look like? How big is that going to be? And is there any kind of fencing on that?
No, well, the pipe is a, is a drainage pipe that's in a casing, and then there's, concrete, footings, if you like, at either end, so it'll span that particular, span the drain part. So it's really only across the drain. So for people walking along, it's not going to interfere with any of the pedestrian activity along the major trail. There isn't any fencing. We wouldn't be allowed to do any fencing in it anyway.
Yeah, it just looks like a diving board to me. Anyway, I just wonder if there was, if you perceive any kind of hazard with that aerial drain.
No, we don't.
Thank you. That, the only question, because you addressed the other issues about the homeowner's responsibilities there. But that does finalize the questions I have. And with that, I'd like to go to the next person to testify, Mr. Lee Deinke. Did I say that right? wish to testify?
Yeah, I don't need to, Mr. Tom did a good job, I'm the applicant, so.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And John Carpenter? Mr. Carpenter, would you like to testify?
John's our civil engineer and doesn't need to testify as well, so.
Okay, well, thank you then. That does end the public testimony. Staff, do we have any letters or anything that's come in?
Yes, Mr. Hearing Examiner, Debbie Root, Senior Planner. I did fail to mention that we did receive a lead exhibit, a letter of concern from Mr. Joe Roberts regarding the current case before you. If you would like me to read that, or if you would like to read that letter into the record.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Reed. I have the letter, Mr. Joseph Roberts. Dear P&Z Committee, thank you for your service. My name is Joseph Roberts. I live at 10309 Colorful Drive, Nampa, Idaho. We access our home regularly through Spruce Street off Santa Ana Avenue. We strongly request the proposed Langley Hall subdivision must include the continuation of space for Spruce Street through to Midland Boulevard. If it doesn't happen now, with all these homes going in close to Midland, I ask when will it go through? To push that much more traffic back west on Spruce to Santa Ana and then down around the school seems foolish and not well planned, especially with the huge subdivision going in now between Spruce, Santa Ana, and Ustick. If that is not required, planning and zoning should give a clear answer to all of us impacted by the failure to require as how and when it will be finished through. Mr. Joseph Roberts. And Mr. Roberts, we thank you for your testimony. This is something I can't answer. I suggest that there's opportunity to work that out with the staff. There will also be the city council hearing on this, and there might be once reviewing this testimony, there might be an opportunity to comment on that. Ms. Ruth, you have, or Rob, you have a comment on that, please?
Mr. Hearing Examiner, I'd be happy to just address this briefly. We have reviewed this. The way that this site lays out, and the number of lots, it did not warrant a traffic impact study, which means that traffic mitigation was not also required as part of this development. The way the site lays out, there's already, from what engineering staff determined, there's already a disproportionate amount of frontage that this development was required to construct, including a crossing over the drain, which is a fairly large structure that has to be extended. Extending to the east is certainly part of the master plan, and the city will push to get that done as soon as we can. It would likely be done through the funding of mitigation from all the developments in the area. The reason why it's a difficult thing to construct immediately is because it's private property that we would have to acquire from a private property owner, and in addition, there's a Pioneer irrigation facility that runs right in that same alignment. And so getting that connection done is going to take a little bit of time and planning and coordinating with those property owners that are at that location. And so it's not something that the city is planning to put off for a long period of time. It is certainly on our radar, and we're trying to strategically figure out how to approach this and get it punched through.
Thank you, Rob. And that concludes the testimony. We'll take a look at the findings. And the findings of facts, first we're looking at an annexation. I believe we've got this in order. The Colorado Hearing Examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law. Annexation is R1, low-density residential zoning, that is. The Caldwell hearing examiner has authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation, annexation is R1 low-density residential. Based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number ANN 20-00010, a request to annex parcel R 343-410B, 13.98 acres with a zone designation of R1, single-family residential, consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan designation as low-density residential, is recommended for approval with conditions of approval listed in section 10. Those conditions are found on page 12 of 61 of the staff report, and 10.1 and 10.2 inclusive. Next. Look at the preliminary plat. The findings of fact for the preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law for the preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation for preliminary plat. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUB 20-00013, a request for preliminary plat, Langley Hall subdivision containing 10.41 acres with 29 residential lots and 12 common lots on R1 low-density residentially zoned property, is recommended for approval with the conditions of approval in section 17 to be enumerated in development agreements. And as noted on page 18 of 61 in the staff report, we have conditions numbered 17.1 through 17.18 inclusive for the conditions of that preliminary plat. And with that, we close this hearing. Thank you. And moving on to the next case on the agenda, action item 3. This is case number ANN-20-07, sub-20P-14. Craig Kolchak is requesting to annex 3 acres. I didn't hear that. Craig Kolchak is requesting to annex 3 acres with the zone designation of R2 medium density residential, consistent with the comprehensive plan designation.
3 acres.
We have some audio difficulties here. Somebody's getting on the line. Would you please hold while I read the introduction to this case? Also requested is approval of the preliminary plat for Lake Park subdivision consisting of 11 single-family residential lots with an average lot size of 6,128 square feet and 3 common lots. The subject property is located at 780 feet south of the intersection of Lake Avenue and Homedale Road on the west side of Lake Avenue in Caldwell, Idaho. And with that, I'll turn the time over to the staff to make their presentation. Ms. Root?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. The request by Mr. Kolchak to annex this 3 acres of property as medium-density residential is consistent with the comprehensive plan map designation for medium density in this area. The site is located within a grouping of parcels that currently reside within the county jurisdiction. They're kind of larger development. They're rural residential parcels essentially, but they're surrounded by city properties on both the east and west side. And eventually, these properties are expected to develop, annex in, and they too would be designated R2 medium residential. The development east of the Lake Avenue is, although zoned R1, currently meets the medium density residential density standards. So at the time it was developed, the standards were required less square footage, and so that development would be consistent with what's being proposed today by Mr. Kolchak. To the west of that is also a proposed development that has an approved preliminary plat with, again, 6,000 square foot lots on that. So Mr. Kolchak's development of proposed 11 lots exceeds the surrounding properties lot size, with exception of the properties that still lie within the county. Mr. Kolchak has made efforts to comply with the requirements of the ordinance. There will be a public street providing access to the 11 parcels. Again, the proposed annexation as medium density is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and the proposed preliminary plat as medium density residential is consistent with the subdivision ordinance and the comprehensive plan component. And I will stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Root. The proposed road spans the width of the property and terminates on the west end. Could you just explain that termination, and is there an intention to continue that on to the property to the west?
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. In the development of the staff report and the considerations of this preliminary plat, staff spoke with the engineering department regarding whether or not that should be an actual road extension to this property versus just a termination there. Engineering, in looking at both the development to the west and at this property, determined that it would not be, that is not where they would like to see a through street for this development, and therefore determined that there would not need to be a through street crossing at this location at this time.
And this route, there's a canal there, or a waterway on the western boundary, and what's the treatment with that? Is that open space or just an easement, or?
Yes, that is a irrigation easement, and it is, the applicant has proposed it as open space. It's kind of common open space, it's not qualifying open space as far as the ordinance requirements are, but it is an easement and will be open space and maintained by the homeowners association.
Thank you. Now, just, we've had a lot of, letters and comments on this, but could you address the, lot size and the proposed, housing size, the footprint of the house is that part of the application? So what these houses are going to look like on the lots? Or that you better the applicants?
Yeah, correct. The minimum lot size for this development is 8,000 square feet. I did not place any conditions or request that any conditions be placed regarding the style and type of home or size of home on these parcels.
Okay, and to be dictated by the required setbacks in the zone. That is all the questions I have. I'd like to request the applicant, Mr. Kulchak, to make a presentation now. Okay. Mr. Kulchak, are you connected?
I'm unmuted now, I believe.
And we'd like to take the opportunity to swear you in, please.
All right.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Kulchak. Proceed with your presentation.
Well, just a brief one. We've contacted the irrigation company that supplies the irrigation to Windsor Creek Subdivision number 1 across the street. Met with the gentleman. We've committed to make improvements on their existing pumping station and plan on tying into that irrigation system across the street. We do propose in our next submittal we're going to have on the final plat, we do propose an HOA that will, break down all the responsibilities that involves the irrigation system as well as the common area with the irrigation to the west. We're planning on fencing the north and the south. The current design shows a separated sidewalk on the north side of Harlow Lane. That's the name of the street that goes and services all these units, and extensive landscaping on both sides. Cindy and Bob Smith to the north, they have horses, and in the neighborhood meeting that we had, we stipulated that we'd ensure that whatever we put in, we'll take into consideration their horses and make sure that there's nothing that could damage or injure any of the horses. That's pretty much it. I think we've covered the irrigation. That was one of the concerns we had, and we're donating a lot of money to the upgrade of that pumping station for Windsor Creek, to the tune of about $36,000. That's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Kulchak. I'd like to direct a question to you that I directed to staff. Could you give me an idea of what the siding of the housing is going to look like? I haven't seen anything in your application about what this development might look like, and what the landscape will look like and that sort of thing. Could you address that, please?
Sure. The landscaping, we've got several trees on the south side of the property, with I've got a 10-foot landscape strip on the south and a 10-foot piece on the north. Each house will also have an individual tree on the house lot. The houses will be around 1,600 square feet. The design is contemporary with kind of a country flair because of the area that we're developing in. could submit, elevation drawings and such for the development, but that would be included in the building, permit application, I believe.
And, what kind of fencing do you propose for the whole development?
I'd like to see a wooden fence as opposed to, vinyl, only because we've got, a southern portion that's, basically a common lot, but I don't wanna have any, melting fences on either side, and on the north side, PVC is not very, horse friendly. One little kick and you could, really damage a horse's hoof or, wither, so, 6 foot, wooden fence.
Thank you. Following on, are you leaving it up to individual homeowners to landscape that rear fence area, be the northern fence?
Well, that's just gonna be, sod. There's not gonna be a landscaping per se. I mean, if they wanna put a tree in the back, they can, but, it's just gonna be sod in the front, sod in the back, tree in the front, and whatever they wanna put in the back. There will be no doubt there'll be a homeowners association requirement to meet the specified planning materials that we'll identify in that homeowners agreement and the architectural committee that's part of the HOA.
Ms. Kolchak, with the, I guess I'm looking for some kind of buffer or acknowledgement of the properties to the north to, in some way, lessen the impact of these houses on those landowners. And that's typically done with landscaping, fencing,
Right.
that kind of thing.
There's a single homeowner, Cindy and Bob Smith are there, that's up towards the front. The rest of it is pasture land. We want to be good neighbors. If there's something that we can do that they could suggest to make it a little more palatable, we'd be more than willing to take a look at it and implement that.
I would like to suggest that, in fact, on, I suppose, the north, south, and west sides of that property to somehow.
The south side has the landscapes. We've got trees, and everything along the south. There's a landscaping strip that's along there in a common lot, and it's heavily landscaped.
Okay, I don't have that information in front of me, that's why I'm asking about it. But there is a
We submitted a
landscape
landscape
plan.
plan. Yeah, we submitted a landscape plan to Debbie and Lauren on the application.
Mr. Hearing Examiner, it is, page 18 is their landscape plan.
Okay. Suppose I missed it here. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, and I apologize to staff, it's just that there's so little landscaping on here. So you're assuming that the homeowners, will somehow, try to soften that northern boundary with the individual landscaping, or, have you addressed that at all?
No, we just met the requirements, we addressed the requirements of the comprehensive plan for buffer and landscaping along both sides of the roadway. We didn't address anything on the rear of the lots. Those are individual homeowners, and there's nothing really that dictates us to do that. But that's something we could do, I guess. There's certainly enough room with the depth of those lots.
Yeah, I'm just, trying to, look at the neighborhood and what the fit would be. So, appreciate you, taking a look at that.
Oh, sure, yeah, no worries. We want to be good neighbors.
Yeah, I do have a lot of concern from the neighbors about that.
Yeah, we've definitely addressed to the south, but to the north, you know, because the property butts the fence. We could, I'll take a look at, we'll talk with the engineer and see if we couldn't maybe put another landscape buffer back there to help that along.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
Trying to be a good neighbor there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and do you have any more testimony, Mr. Kolchak?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to the next person, Nick LaCrosse. Nick LaCrosse, wish to testify?
I was just kind of sitting in, I'm the design engineer on the project, and I was just kind of sitting in just in case there was something specific that I needed to kind of voice my opinion about. But as far as testifying, I think I'm pretty good. If there's any specific questions anybody has for me, I'm more than happy to address those.
Thank you, sir. Staff, are there any questions for Mr. LaCrosse, and we open his testimony for them? Okay, thank you, Mr. LaCrosse. We'll go on to the next individual on the list, Joseph Canning. Mr. Canning, would you like to testify?
He may not be on the line.
Mr. Canning is also part of the application team and engineer.
He's the lead engineer on the project.
So I assume he does not wish to testify. So the next person on the list are persons Walter and Carrie Crichton. Walter or Carrie, are you online? Do you wish to testify?
Yes, this is Carrie Crichton,
Okay.
and, yes, and, we live at 16805 Lake Avenue. We're on the south end, the first acre and a half. And
Ms. Crichton, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. We'd like to swear you in, please.
sure. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do.
Thank you very much, Ms. Crichton. Go ahead with your testimony, please.
Okay. So when we moved here 9 years ago, you know, we bought this property based on the fact that, you know, all the homeowners owned 1.5 acres to 3 acres, and that was what was appealing to us, not to be living in a subdivision atmosphere. And putting this subdivision right next to us, you know, that kind of defeats the purpose of moving here. Our bedroom is going to face the roadway into this subdivision, which is gonna create a lot of noise for us. And I think that also I think the view, it's gonna block our view that we have out the backyard, because now we're just gonna have neighbors to look at. I just think it's gonna, change our quality of life. So, I would like to see this be rejected.
Thank you, Ms. Crichton. Does that conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
And Walter Crichton, is he there? Would he like to testify?
He is not, he is at work and could not make it.
Okay, he signed up here. Yeah, Ms. Carden, is there something that, assuming this is approved by city council, that, you would like to see, like, to somehow, ameliorate the impact?
Well, we always knew that, you know, that someone would build there eventually, but we assumed it would be one household, not 11. You know, and that's what we would like to see, is just one household there.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, we will move to the next person wishing to testify, Cynthia Smith. Ms. Smith, are you on the line?
I am.
We would like to swear you in first, Ms. Smith.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Please proceed, Ms. Smith, and thank you very much.
My name is Cynthia Smith. I live at 16871 Lake Avenue in Caldwell, and we are on the north side of this property. And I'm speaking for ourselves, I'm also speaking for the neighbors that are surrounding us, because we've all gotten together on this. And, as Carrie mentioned, we all moved here for the land, the view, the feel. We have the horses. There's also goats to the south of this property. There's also foxes, coyotes, and chickens all the way around. And it's something that we love. Putting 11 houses, which is basically going to look like a strip mall, and if you're going to put fences on the north and the south of it, it's going to look more like a little commune, which just does not fit with the demographics that we currently have. And I am concerned also for the neighbors, because they're going to be the ones that will be impacted by the lighting that's going to go on the street. And I think it's not going to come out very well. It just doesn't seem to fit. It's stated it's a minor arterial roadway, which it is a smaller roadway, but Lake Avenue is quite busy. And I see if we have that many houses and a two-car garage, most likely 22 more cars going down on the road, which I see is a problem. And we knew that CBH already owns land on Florida, which is going to turn into a subdivision before long. That is to the west of us. We do have a buffer, thankfully, because we have the canal and we have our personal irrigation ditch. And I just don't see that trying to cram 11 houses in just almost 3 acres is going to work. And we would just really like to see this not happen. And I do appreciate you listening and taking all this into consideration, Mr. Hearing Examiner.
Ms. Smith, I'll ask you the same question as I asked Ms. Crichton. Do you have some suggestions, should this be approved, to somehow soften or ameliorate the impact of this proposed development?
Well, I don't know where they're thinking of putting a fence, and if they want to buffer between, I don't know if they're going to put a 10-foot buffer between us and the fence. Then who take care of that common area? I guess, you know, are you going to have grass in there, or I don't know what they're going to have to buffer that.
Cindy, can I just put something in here? The buffer would be on the south.
Hello? The person who's still testifying, we can't have a rebuttal like that. You'll have to wait for the rebuttal time. Mr. Kolchak? Okay, and then, thank you, Mrs. Smith. Does that conclude your testimony?
Yes, it does.
I appreciate your testimony, thank you very much. Now, in addition to those who signed up, we have a number of letters, which I'll go through, addressing this. Beginning with, letter dated January 1st, 2021, from Marvin and Carol, Bediant. I hope I did that right. One of the pluses to moving to our 1 acre parcel in 2005 was room to stretch with neighbors who were like-minded and established a country-like community. Our neighbors, like ourselves, enjoy the calmness and openness that gives the ability to enjoy nature, our pets, and other animals. We treasure and respect the local wildlife that have come to know our properties as their homes. And crowding more houses and people directly in the middle of our rural community devastates and cheats us of our way of life. We're not naive enough to believe the world will not progress, but we will hope this progress would happen on the peripheral, not smack in the heart of our neighborhood. I believe it is unfair to expect us to accept 11 new neighbors crammed on a narrow 3 acres for the purpose of one person's investment in monetary gains. Surely all the new subdivisions established and those being built around us would suffice to call our proper. Building many homes on this piece of property off Lake Avenue will take away the open, serene, and uncrowded boundaries we have come to know and love. Thank you, Marvin and Carol Bediant. The next exhibit, we have a letter from Ms. Cynthia Smith that states the same type of thing, the same sentiments that she gave in her oral testimony. I won't read that, but as part of the record, it's in opposition to this proposal and concerns mainly the high density of this proposal as compared to the neighbors and the more bucolic houses in large lots. The next exhibit is from the person who testified, Terry Crichton, and again, her verbal testimony reflects the content of the letter in opposition to the proposal and is concerned about the impact on ours and our neighbors' quality of life to change the 3 acres to city and put 11 houses in the middle of our little piece of paradise. And that is in opposition to the proposal. The next letter we have is from Carlos and Francis Cortez, part of the record staff report, and they live on 16795 Lake Avenue in Caldwell. I assume that's nearby to this proposal, and they also are against this proposal, expressing a lot of the same issues as the previous testifiers and letters that were received, that the 11 homes on less than 3 acres would change all that. In addition, with the proposed homes, we can assume that those houses will come with at least 2 vehicles each. That's 20 new cars at a minimum, pulling out into Lake Avenue multiple times a day, and we know traffic is already dangerous in that area, with apparently no traffic impact study is required. And what really worries those of us who live in the area is the safety. Many of us are retired and value the trust we have in our neighbors. As the plan currently stands, there is a disagreement among law enforcement on who is in charge of patrolling and protecting the area around Lake Avenue from Homeville Road south to Highway 55. And they address the safety issues there. And they are on record as opposing this application. I think that is all the correspondence that we have in this room.
Yes, I believe it is.
I hope I did them justice. The letters were all in opposition, and some of those testified verbally. Part of what we're trying to do here is, put this in perspective. As a hearing examiner, I've been on, both sides of these issues. And, I understand the objections, but what we have to deal with as, appointed staff to the mayor and city council is the, letter of the law, the black and white, aspects of the comprehensive plan and the zoning code. And, this proposal, is in a, designated area in the comprehensive plan that would allow this type of housing, and the zoning is appropriate, to the type of plat that has been presented. And we have to look at the, legal standing of those items, the comprehensive plan and the zoning code, and make some kind of judgment on what is allowed under those instruments. This will be made final, by the mayor and city council, and there'll be an opportunity at that point to address them, and, they will have the final say on the issue. And, I would urge you to do that. With that, I'll proceed to the, findings on this case. I'm sorry, I got myself here, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes in rebuttal. Mr. Polchak, would you like to take, time for rebuttal, please? Mr. Polchak, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, would you like to make rebuttal? If you do, you have 5 minutes.
Not so much a rebuttal, but just, further explanation for Cindy Smith and, the others. There will be no lighting on the street, it's not a requirement, so that's kind of a moot issue. And, you know, I'm willing to take a look if staff recommends it to do additional landscaping in the back of those lots to mitigate some of that concern. But as it stands, you know, it's not a requirement, I'm just trying to be a good neighbor. And we talked about this when we had the neighborhood meeting. We'll be responsible through the HOA to maintain all common area lots. And there will be, an item in the HOA that requires all the homeowners to meet a certain standard. So I don't think I'd be worried about anything going to pot as far as the landscaping goes. But that's all I've got. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to the city council meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Polchak. And
Thank you.
With that, Ms. Ruth, did you have a comment, please?
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I believe the city engineer needs to address some testimony that just occurred in the rebuttal.
Thank you. Rob? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just a point of clarification, the city does require street lighting on any public road, and at this location, there may be 1 or 2 streetlights that would be required. Those can be configured and set up so that the light shining outward onto adjacent properties is limited, with visors that they can put on those lights, and it shines down more so out.
Yeah.
And so, that lighting would be required as part of the development.
Okay.
Thank you,
I'll
Rob.
add on that. Thanks, Rob.
With that, well, Ms. Root, do we have, written testimony for this proposal that, we haven't included? Is that everything?
That's everything that.
That's all you have? Okay, with that, close the testimony on this, and, we'll look at the findings for this case. And as follows, findings and facts, annexation as R2, medium density residential. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. conclusions of law. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the city council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation for annexation as R2 medium density residential. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number ANN-20-07, a request to annex parcel R327260-1000, 2.90 acres with a zone designation of R2, medium density residential, consistent with the 2040 comprehensive plan designation of medium density residential, is recommended for approval with conditions of approval listed in section 10. Section 10, starting on page 10 of 28 of the staff report, we have item 10.1 and 10.2. Moving on to the next part of the application. We have, for the preliminary plat, the findings of facts. The Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. Conclusions of law, preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation for a preliminary plat, based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUB-20-14, a request for a preliminary plat, Lake Park subdivision, containing 2.90 acres with 11 residential lots and 2 common lots on R2 medium density residential zone property, is recommended for approval with the conditions of approval in section 17 be enumerated in the development agreement. On page 15 of the staff report, 15 of 28, the conditions 17.1 through 17.16 inclusive. And with that, I'd like to add to condition 17.6 that the applicant shall expand the landscaping plan to provide more of a buffer on the north, south, and east sides of this proposal. And that the details of that will be worked out with the staff as the plat is submitted. And with that, I conclude this hearing. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is an item of new business. This is case number SUB-20-00012, a request for preliminary plat for Sela Estates subdivision, a single-family residential development in an R1 low-density residential zone on parcel R250-52012, containing 18.76 acres, and a request to modify the development agreement, Sela Estates Development Agreement. The proposed subdivision consists of 53 single-family lots and 12 common lots. The 2040 comprehensive plan designates this property as low-density residential. The subject property is located on the northwest corner of Homedale Road and 10th Avenue. And with that, I'd like to turn the time over to the staff of Ms. Root to make her presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Examiner. Debbie Root, Senior Planner, 621 Cleveland Boulevard, and I have been sworn. as indicated in the opening statement, this development, Sela Estate subdivision, is proposing, 52 single-family lots with 9 common lots on approximately 18.74 acres. This development was originally approved in, 2008 with a development agreement that, the applicant has, submitted an amendment for the development agreement and, had very specifically lined out each item that he was requesting to change. For the most part, the requests for change, actually were, fitting with the, development agreement that is in place. He has asked to, modify the exhibit, which is a new preliminary plat. The new preliminary plat actually adds, just four additional lots to what the original approval for Sela Estates had added. The road configuration changed significantly. The applicant has added, a large portion of open space and amenities within the development. He has worked closely with the, with staff and the surrounding neighbors for this development. The proposed, changes to the development agreement include, that all of the engineering requirements be, updated to the current requirements for engineering. And then there were a number of other, smaller, revisions to that development agreement. He also, requested to add a couple of conditions, based upon, interaction with the neighboring property owners. The property is currently zoned R1, single-family residential, low-density residential, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The development lies adjacent to 10th Avenue, Pat Lane, and Homedale Road. There are large residential estate-type lots in the area and surrounding this development, and it is staff's belief that Mr. Schultz has done a great job of working with those properties and trying to meet the development standards as well as taking into consideration the surrounding properties by placing larger lots along the western boundary, which is also required by the development agreement, but it's consistent with attempting to work with the neighborhoods and make a transitional development throughout this proposed subdivision for Sela Estates. There are many improvements to the roadway that have to be done, and right-of-way dedications for turn lanes and frontage improvements with this. The amendments to the development agreement are consistent with the requirements of the comprehensive plan. They actually go well beyond what the requirements of the zoning ordinance are, and that's commendable to the homeowners and to Mr. Schultz for working with them and working within the bounds of that development agreement. The development itself for Sela Estate also is very compatible with the comprehensive plan requirements. Many standards, goals, and policies have been met with it. The lot sizes, actual average lot size of over 9,000 square feet actually exceeds the density requirements for the R1 zone. And the plat itself is in substantial conformance with all the required standards and statutes and code for a subdivision plat in the R1 zone. Staff is recommending approval as conditioned of the, amendments to the development agreement, and is recommending approval of the, preliminary plat as presented, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ruth. I don't really have any questions, the reason I don't have any questions is this is, very well done as a plat design. And, would you typify this as, being, one of the better designs that, we've seen recently?
This is actually a really nice design, and there's been a lot of effort on the applicant's part to work with the homeowners and try to resolve some of the conflicts that have, come up with regards to the design. Again, there are some concerns, and those letters will be, presented, the letters of concern that were received by staff. There has been concern that the density doesn't meet the original density of the preliminary plat for Sealet Estates that was approved with the original development. But the proposed development, although it does add 4 lots, is a significant improvement to the development that was originally proposed in planning and design and amenities for the individuals within the development.
I think I concur with that. I do have one question, looking at the west boundary there. Looks like a micro path going through the property to the west, that triangular shape. Is that intended to be communication between subdivisions? Is that the point of that?
No, that actually, there is an out parcel on the, southwest corner of the development that does not have direct access to Homedale Road. And so for future development, that is a, common drive, or basically a private drive that provides, through access to the, triangular portion of property that is an out parcel to the west.
Okay, that clears that up. Thank you very much, Ms. Root. I don't have any further questions. With that, I'd like to turn the time over to the applicant, Matt Schultz. Mr. Schultz, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Mr. Schultz, we'd like to swear you in, and then you may proceed with your testimony, please.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Matt Schultz, 8421 South 10 Mile Meridian, here on behalf of Pine Street LLC. We were shown this particular property last year, and maybe trying to help Pine Street develop it, whether we use the old one or do a new one. He wanted to move forward, and we looked at the old one and thought we could do a little better. Not only, maybe pick up a few lots, but also improve, from day one, we thought we could improve the lot depth up against our western neighbors. We provided that open space from day one, and also brought up the standards, the current standards for open space, and provide something more meaningful for our interior residents of the subdivision. The site geometry lends itself to a simple yet elegant loop that provides the lot depths we need, as well as some extra, 140 to 145 feet on our west boundary, which is good. And we've also, after our neighborhood meeting, incorporated into the development agreement, we added single-story homes along that west boundary, as well as 3-car garages. Although I knew all of these were big enough for 3-car garages, we specifically put that in the development agreement. As well as we increased the minimum square footage of the homes that are in the current development agreement, on single stories from 1,800 to 1,900, and on 2 stories from 2,000 to 2,300 at their request. We met them in the middle a little bit. They wanted a little bit more, and we said, hey, we'll come up, but We think they're all gonna be probably bigger, but it just gives us some flexibility with the market. Not everybody wants the bigger house. It's still gonna be nice, still gonna be expensive. This is three sides of development is, pretty unique for me in my 20 years of, development and engineering experience. I usually get one or two frontages, three, I can't remember having three. So this is expensive, but, the market's allowing us to tackle this and do the right thing. Put the landscape buffers in, put the right-hand turn lane at Homedale and 10th in, provide ample open space and amenities, like Debbie said, average lot square footage over 9,000. We have 30% of our lots over 10,000 square feet. Try to hold a 72-foot wide lot, which allows us a 3-car in every one of them with your 6 and 6 setbacks in Caldwell. So this is a great subdivision anywhere in the valley. Happy to represent it, and hopefully and get it built and bring some nice product, some more nice product to Caldwell, in terms of homes and a variety of homes on the upper end. As far as statistics, I think I've covered a lot of them. I do appreciate the kudos on this design. Some sites lend themselves, they're easier than others. And I'm not saying this one's easy. It's never easy when you butt up against large county projects. It's always a challenge. However, these 10,000 square foot lots, 140 foot deep, single story homes, that's really the way to do it. And I know my neighbors aren't happy. They'd rather have half as number of lots, and I understand that, or maybe a couple lots, like the last application. But we do meet code. We do exceed the comp plan in terms of under 3 to the acre, which is considered low density in all the jurisdictions that we work in. And we do agree to all staff's conditions of approval, as well as we would ask you support our proposed development agreements, provisions that we've pretty much just caught up for the current site plan, but plus added some of those extra house items that were requested, a little bit of fence, we're providing an extra special fence along that west boundary as well. And with that, I'm happy to represent this project for Pine Street LLC and look forward to getting it built, and we ask for your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I did have just a question or two. The open spaces there are real plentiful, and are they strictly for the use of the homeowners association, or is there some connectivity there that you're looking for across the neighborhood?
Yeah, Mr. Hearing Examiner, we had not really contemplated having it to be a public park. These would be owned and maintained by the Selah Estates Homeowners Association for the use of their residents. I doubt there's gonna be anybody out there policing that. If somebody wanted to walk their dog through the subdivision and hang out and all that. No, they don't police it, but the ownership is the HOA. It's not a public park, but that was our intent, to make it for the residents of Selah Estates.
Would that be perhaps like a pickup for the school bus on that corner open space? You had that discussion with the school district?
On Pat Lane or?
Yeah, Pat Lane.
On Pat Lane, we have provided the right of way as required by your city engineers, the 23.5 on our side, and there's already existing right of way on the other side. We could, if there needs to be a widening there, we could certainly look at that, where that drainage basin is. We have not been told that we needed anything extra beyond what we already have there, and certainly school bus could pull up there and pick up kids for sure.
Thank you. Then I'm looking at your exhibits for the housing examples, 1 through 4, I believe. Are you going to be the builder, or is this going to be ensconced in the development agreement about these housing types, or is this just an example? Just help me out with that.
Right, Mr. Hearing Examiner, in all of our jurisdictions, we provide examples of examples of certain types. In this case, would meet the special conditions in the development agreement, talking about the facade being articulated and different materials, no straight up garages with no eaves. We're not doing that. And that's really, I was involved in a few different agencies, those same architectural guidelines presented. I think they started in Nampa against one of the bigger home builders that was doing some straight up and down boxes with no eaves. And so that's where those came from. We're happy to comply with those. We anticipate selling these. The developer is going to sell these to 3 or 4 builders for high retail value, and they're going to provide homes within these guidelines that we presented. Those pictures were provided by our sales rep, and he's going to own up to meeting those as well as the architectural guidelines and those minimum home square footages and the 3-car garage and the single story on the west side. Those are all going to be regulated by the development agreement, and also they're going to know before they buy the lot that that is what's required out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schultz. I hope they follow these examples there. They seem to address the issues that we have in the development agreement. And I once again like to thank you for a good design. And with that, we'll move to the next person on the list, Betsy Hunsicker. Is Ms. Hunsicker on the line?
Hi, I'm going to hold my testimony. Thank you. And I would like to say that Mr. Schultz has been very accommodating, and I've appreciated working with him. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunsicker. Next on the list is Amy Woodruff. Ms. Woodruff, would you like to testify?
Yes, please.
Yes, would like to swear you in.
Woodruff. Go ahead.
Ms. Woodruff, okay.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Proceed, please, Ms. Woodruff.
Amy Woodruff, business address 305 Cornell, Middleton, here on behalf of the Virginia Bartok property, which is located just directly east. The address is 5605 South 10th. We've worked with the Selah development team regarding the entrance, the Tater Street entrance, and positioning the entrance so that it doesn't impact negatively Ms. Bartok's property and her livability. We're still talking about perhaps moving the entrance just 10 to 12 feet north if possible. I want to echo what Ms. Root said and the other person that testified as well. The Selah team and Matt in particular have been very cooperative and very professional. So, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Woodruff. Next, signed up to testify is Timothy Rosdick. Timothy, Ms. Rosdick, are you online and would you like to testify?
I am, and yes, I would.
Like to swear you in, please?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Proceed with your testimony, please.
Yes, my name is Tim Rosendick. I live on 315 East Pat Lane. My wife and I have lived there since 1991. I, along with our neighbors, have been, challenged by this conversion of this beautiful farmland to residential property for over a decade now. I think all of us have kind of surrendered to the fact that it will be developed into residential property. And our hope is that it'll be of the kind that will be of benefit to us, mitigate the harm that it, and changes that it makes to our lifestyle, and also be a good model for the city of Caldwell for future development. My concern, is that there's some assurance that that exit and entryway from the subdivision onto Pat Lane, there's gonna be over 50 lots on this property. There's going to be a lot of traffic coming in and out off the Pat Lane. I can't tell you how much, but a lot, more than there is now. And what I would like to see is I'd like to have the applicant consider moving that entryway closer to where it was agreed to in the original 2008 agreement, which is essentially just one more lot on their plat to the east. That'll move it further away from my property so that I don't suffer from the negative impact of traffic coming in and out in close adjacency to my home. So if that can get resolved, I will withdraw my concerns and opposition for the development.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendick. Does that conclude your testimony?
It does.
Okay, Rob, could we get you to comment on that as far as location of that, ingress egress on Pat Lane, please?
Yes, thank you. I can, without looking closer at it, I can't tell exactly what the distance is to the intersection, but there are limits to how close an access point should be to an intersection. This is a local street, and so there is a little bit of flexibility, but I would have to probably go back and take a look at that if that's feasible and safe.
And Rob, is this the kind of traffic that might look at like a right turn lane there or something that might help that out, or is there the dimensions there available to do something like that?
No, I'm not expecting that amount of trip generation at this location. There will be some trips that come out this way, and then there will be some that go directly out onto 10th Avenue. The proximity to the intersection is really the big concern, because you don't want it too close to where cars are pulling out, and you have other cars coming off 10th that are kind of coming around the corner, and you have that conflict area. And so that, we would just have to take a look at how close that is and what we feel like would be a safe scenario, and what the limit would be on that.
And that's typically something like 200 plus feet from the intersection, that you want that next intersection?
Yeah.
200?
It depends on the type of intersection. So generally, it would be, a major intersection, you'd be 440 feet. It could be as close as 315 feet. And then on a local road, it could be 150. It just depends on the amount of traffic that is expected to be generated, so.
Thank you, Rob. And with that, we'll move to the next person sign up, Amy Christopherson. Amy, are you online? Amy Christopherson? I don't think we have a connection. We'll move to the next person signed up, Jeff Hunsicker. Mr. Hunsicker, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to testify, please?
Well, I submitted a letter, and I didn't see that show up in the documents that we've received. Basically what I would like to do is.
Sure. Could I hold up just 1 second and have you sworn in, please?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Hunsicker. Proceed with your testimony, please.
Well, is there a way to written testimony was received?
Yes. Yes, we do have that on record. I've got that in front of me now, a one-page letter from January 22nd.
Yes, sir. So that's really all I'd like to say, so if that gets read into the testimony, then I don't really need to expand on that, other than just to say that, you know, I too appreciate the developer's attention to all of our concerns. But you know, this property has a history of, you know, from back in '08 of, you know, a long and contentious, you know, process of getting the development plan approved, and there are certain aspects of the new development that don't meet, the criteria that was established back then, and that's really my concern, is as far as the density goes, but it's all in the letter, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Hunsaker. I appreciate it. And, next we'll go to Miguel Herrera. Miguel Herrera, are you online? Not on, okay. Informed that Mr. Herrera is not on, and that ends the sign-up list that I have. And Ms. Root, are there any other letters concerning this case other than the one from Mr. Hunsaker?
Mr. Herring, Examiner, the, letters of concern that we have received were in the staff report, with the exception of Mr. Hunsaker's letter as it came in, after the staff reports had been posted to the website. And that letter of concern had, been sent to you, Mr. Herring, Examiner, in advance of this hearing, and we have that here as a late exhibit today.
Okay, I'm looking for that letter now. From Mr. Hunsaker. Okay, yes, he gave us a brief testimony, and I'll just paraphrase what he has written in his letter, January 22nd, concerning the Seal Estate sub. And his home borders on the west boundary. His primary concern with this proposed development are with the density and with the overall quality and aesthetics. I believe the responsible development of this agricultural ground as residential neighborhood should require that it blend in complementarily with the surrounding properties with respect to quality and density. Furthermore, as this property is an annex to the city of Caldwell and is situated along one of the major entrances into the city, I believe the development of this property, if properly executed, could be a complement to the efforts to improve the overall quality and perception of our community. And he goes on to address the density issue, which he did in his verbal testimony. They're approved in 2008 with 2.56 units per acre, or that's the current approval. In 2008, it was 2.83 units per acre, and he's concerned about the higher density being proposed with this application. And then he talks about the quality and aesthetics. The property is situated prominently along the major corridor into the city of Caldwell and is surrounded by larger estate-style properties. I think with minor improvements to the proposed plans, this development could potentially be a huge benefit to the surrounding residents and to the city of Caldwell. And as to paraphrase his letter in light of his verbal testimony. And with that, I will close this hearing and the testimony portion of it, and move on to the findings. The first part of the application is to amend the development agreement from 2008.
have a train going by. I'm gonna wait for a second. That train goes by. For case SUB 20-00012, Sealer Estate subdivision, the findings of facts for the development agreement modification, the hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. The conclusions of law for the development agreement modification. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. Recommendation, development agreement modification. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that development agreement number 200-802-3676 modification be approved with the following conditions of approval. And those conditions are found on page 11 of 60 in the staff report, items 8.2 through item 8.4 inclusive. And moving on to the preliminary plat, findings of fact. Caldwell hearing examiner accepts the facts outlined in the staff report, public testimony, and the evidence list. All adopted city ordinances, standards, and codes were used in evaluating the application. Conclusions of law, preliminary plat. The Caldwell hearing examiner has the authority to hear this case and recommend to the Caldwell City Council that it be approved or denied. The public notice requirements were met, the hearing was legally noticed and posted, and the hearing was held and conducted under the requirements of Idaho Code and city ordinances. The recommendation for the preliminary plat. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council that case number SUB-20P-12, a request by EST Development LLC for preliminary plat approval, we have that's the wrong statement here. Let me back up on that.
Yeah, the case number is incorrect.
I'll start over the recommendations, preliminary plat. This case number SUB-20-00012, Sealer Estate subdivision. Based on the findings of facts and conclusions of law, the Caldwell hearing examiner hereby recommends to the mayor and city council the case number SUB-20-00012, the request by, Matt Schultz, Meridian, Idaho, for the Sealer Estate subdivision. I'm sorry, I've got to back up here. Containing 18.74 acres and 52 single-family lots and 9 common lots for the property located on parcel R250-52012 in Caldwell, Idaho, is approved with the following conditions of approval. And those are found on page 14 of 60 in the staff report, and it includes items 12.2 through item 12.15 inclusive. And evidence from the hearings examiner. And with that, I close this hearing and the cases tonight. Thank you. Good evening.